Hi guys, welcome back. Thanks for bearing with us. We are just going to bring on Evert now. Welcome, Evert.
Thank you. Let me just open the slide. So there was a bit of an issue there. So good afternoon. Sorry for the technical interruptions. I wanted to talk to you about the vision that we have at Deloitte for AI, and it's a vision where we don't want a world, a future where machines take over and human values are sidelined. We want, and our clients want, a future where technology, where AI helps us to serve our clients, helps us to become better companies, and also to address the most pressing societal issues. What I want to share with you today is 4 key components that I see, 4 key requirements, if you will, to be able to address this to address this issue, to make applications of AI, to make use of technology, so that we can actually enable human and machine collaboration and not replace one with the other. Back in '88, when I actually started studying AI, this was one of the blockbuster movies, Rain Man, by with Tom Hoffman and with Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise, and it's it's an interesting movie about brotherly love and everything. But the crucial point that I want to make is Raymond, played by Dustin Hoffman. Raymond has autism, and he has what's known as the savant syndrome. So he has autism at the very, very end of the spectrum, where he finds it very difficult to relate to other persons, to function in society. But he also has a particular set of skills, like incredible recall. He can calculate like nobody's business, that are well beyond the scale of achievement for most humans. Now, of course, this is a movie, and autism is much more nuanced than we can see for this movie. But the point I want to make is regarding a part of the plot in this movie, where Raymond helps Tom Cruise to gain a lot of money at the casino with his particular skills. And the thing is that that's the only way that you can employ this kind of skills, is by using them in exactly the right conditions. And in that sense, AI and somebody like Raymond in this film are similar. They can do a couple of things, a very limited set of things, really, really well. But you really have to be very careful about the setting in which you do it, and they have no understanding of the wider implications of what they're doing. Now, again, I want to stress that this is just a movie, and I'm only highlighting this one particular aspect, and I don't mean to say that this goes for most people with, or indeed any real people with autism, or indeed, I'm not trying to say that we should use automation to break the bank at casinos. Those are not points I'm trying to make. The crucial point I'm trying to make is that when we use AI, when we employ automation in a more general sense, maybe, we have to consider whether we're using the right tool for the job. And these tools all come with their limitations, and these tools all have their strengths and their weaknesses. And whether the tool is right is also a discussion that has to be made, or a discussion that has to be had at a higher level in the organization. It can't just be the engineer building the system. It also has to be signed off at a higher management level, because the choice, what decisions do we automate and what decisions do we not automate, that is an ethical choice, and that is not one that should be made just by somebody who happens to have the technical skills to implement that. So that's an important point, and that is, I think, the first component of being able to to use AI so that it can function with humans, so that it can function with us. This is Glenn Rodriguez, and the example I'm about to tell you is about Compass, the system that's used for parole assessment in the United States. And this system has become an infamous poster child for biased AI, for AI that amplifies all kinds of societal biases and issues. But that's not the point that I want to make today. The point that I want to make today is specific to Glenn's particular case. He was up for parole. He had been in jail for 16 years for murder. He had admitted that he'd done that murder, and he was up for parole. And he had a squeaky clean record once in jail. So he had done everything right, no violence, no nothing, and yet parole was denied. And it was denied on the basis of this particular compass system. The compass system, which is, like I said, it's fairly well known in transparent AI circles because of this bias that seems to be part of the system. But in this particular case, it didn't have anything to do with bias in the data that trained the model, and in fact, we still don't know for certain because the model is secret. No, what was actually the case was that bail was denied because of a data entry error. The officer in charge of filling out the data for this compass system in this particular case filled out all the forms, but at one question number 90, he filled in no. He filled in yes where he should have said no. So he just made a mistake. And the thing is that question was, does this person appear to have notable difficulties with discipline? And that the mere fact that this was entered wrongly meant that the system decided that Glenn had a high risk of reoffense and therefore was not eligible for parole. And the thing here, the point that I'm trying to make is that we have to be aware that either the humans using the system or the system itself, mistakes will be made. The system will fail in some possibly exceptional circumstances, right? And in the current discussions, we very often see that these circumstances relate to maybe racial or sexual biases, like we see in another famous story, the passport application system in the UK. And I'm not saying that that's not a problem. It's a huge problem that should be addressed. But the other issue there, the other point that I'm trying to make, is that these systems can enforce bureaucracy. Right? They can, and by setting the rules, and it can be a black box AI model, but the same actually goes for simple handcrafted rules. But by setting the rules in stone, as you do in a system like this, you very strongly run the risk of valuing the rules over human judgment, and that's what bureaucracy is, right? And bureaucracy does not work well with exceptions, does not work well when there are bias in the systems. So we need to be able to use human judgment, to have humans override the systems, right? And how we can, and some of the things I'll be saying after this relate to how we can do that, right? So we have to build these systems. If we use AI, if we automate certain decisions, we have to anticipate that there will be failures, and there has to be some way to address these failures, right? There has to be some way in which we can second guess the system, and in which where we can decide whether human judgment maybe has a better chance of doing the right thing. So it's very unfortunate that I have to present via a PDF, because this was a slide with all beautiful builds, but I can tell the story nonetheless. One of the things I find myself doing a lot at Deloitte is employing AI to combat financial fraud. That's the part of Deloitte that I'm in. We do a lot of that. And one of the things when we combat financial fraud, one of the techniques that we use is outlier detection. And this is a project that we did for a large investment bank, where we used outlier detection to identify, let's say, unusual transactions, right? And so it was, like I said, it was going to be a beautiful animation of all these dots. But what it boils down to is that we start out with just under 400,000 transactions that need to be checked. And normally, right, in the traditional audits, we would take a random sample of a certain size out of that and check those. And if there was nothing untoward with these transactions, everything would be fine. But we decided to use outlier detection to take, a non-random sample, a sample of anomalous transactions that somehow stand out from the main body of transactions. And in the end, so I'll spare you the technical details, but in the end, it boiled down to that we identified around 150 anomalous transactions, and these we verified, and these were checked in great detail too, and we had some interesting findings. The crucial thing we find when we use this is that to enable the investigator to investigate, to assess whether an outlier is indeed, whether there is indeed something wrong, because the fact that something is an outlier doesn't necessarily mean that there is fraud or corruption or unmitigated risks or whatever. It's just an outlier. It's just different from the others. So you need to investigate them further, and to arm the investigator with some understanding of why something stands out, why a particular transaction is anomalous. We need to explain the decisions of the model. And I'm sure, and transparency has been mentioned several times today already. We've been using a particular variant of SHEP in this particular case. And this is just a brief view of the kind of explanations that we give, where we can see which attributes, which features of this particular transactions made it stand out compared to the others. And that's crucial for the investigator to be able to assess it properly. So explanations are crucial, not just for fairness, also for fairness, of course, but also for acceptance, and for acceptance by the users, and to support them in their further actions, right? Because if we want to use AI with humans, then the humans have to understand why AI does certain things, why the technology gives certain suggestions, makes certain decisions. I'm going to skip this example because I realize that I'm running out of time. I just want to show, very briefly mention this example. It's a fairly standard classification issue. It was about fraud detection in benefits applications. And the model, so the model in itself is not that interesting. It was just a classification model, identified risk levels, and depending on the risk level, users would, or applicants, I should say, would have a certain probability of being validated before the benefit was awarded. So risk bucket assessment, so far so boring, not a lot, not specific going on. But what was really interesting were two effects here. One is the users of this particular system felt really enabled, felt a lot better about their work, because the fact that the applications that they were reviewing were much more likely to be interesting, to actually be fraudulent or need some kind of change to be able to award them. So it had a very beneficial effect. But the other thing, the crucial thing that I wanted to say here, is that building this model was easy. It took us, I don't think it even took us a week, right? Then we had to refine it. It took us maybe a couple of weeks to add some more data sources. But actually developing, actually implementing this and making sure that the users were all on board, that was a process of months, right? So the technology was easy. That was not the problem. The processes, changing the processes, that was the hard part. So embracing AI, embracing automation in a wider sense, is about adapting processes and not about adopting the right algorithm. So these were the 4 requirements that I wanted to share with you. Use the right tool for the right job. Decide at the appropriate level whether you want to automate something or not, whether you ought to automate something or not. Anticipate failure, anticipate exceptions. Make sure that these exceptions can be handled appropriately, that there is a fallback mechanism for people who don't fit the mold. Explanations are crucial for acceptance and for support, and to assess fairness as well. So I mentioned those. And embracing AI, embracing technology. It's about the processes. Technology is easy. It always turns out to be, relatively at least. So that was my bit. If you have any further questions, then please reach out to me. I'll be available in the chat later on. You can find me at via email or on LinkedIn or on our AI website. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Evert. Really appreciate that. A lot of great insights there. Really like your comments around onboarding and process. I always say that technology moves faster than people actually adopt it. And actually, considering the last conversation we had, that might be a mixed blessing, you know? So thank you very much. If you have questions for Evert, please click the link in the chat box.